So one of y'all left a comment on one of my Caribbean videos and mentioned a 14-day Caribbean cruise on Norwegian Cruise Lines and asked if I had forgotten it, missed it, and wondered how it would hold up against the other itineraries I mentioned. Well, I was skeptical, so I took a look and I was shocked at what I saw. 14 days? Okay. No sea days? What? Hey, welcome to This is the Cruise. I'm Clint, and this is the channel where we look at future cruise itineraries and try to find out if this is the cruise for you. Today, we're looking at Southern Caribbean cruises on the Norwegian Sky. There are 7 very similar itineraries on the Norwegian Sky this spring, and I've rated them all to help you figure out if any of these work for you. To do this, I'm not going to step through each itinerary one by one and share the rating. We're going to focus more on what's similar and how they're different. But before we get started, as always, I'd appreciate it if you like the video, go ahead and click the like button, subscribe for sure, it really helps me out. I appreciate all the comments and feedback that you guys leave. And like this video, oftentimes the comments create new ideas. Let me know what you want to see. So like I said, we're going to focus on these 7 different itineraries that the Norwegian Sky is doing in the Caribbean. But normally, as always, as I'm sure most of you do, I cross-reference my research with what's on the website of the cruise line. And as I was pulling down the maps on Norwegian's cruise line, ncl.com, I noticed that the maps were leaving out stops. They would have the list, the itinerary list right there. We're going to go here, then we're going to go here, then we're going to go here. And you look at the map and it would skip islands and skip stops. And I thought, how funny would it be if you're on this ship and let's say you're in St. Lucia and on the bridge, the captain asked the navigator, all right, where are we going next? He's like, you know what? We've been doing these itineraries. They're similar, but they're different. I got to check the website to see where we go next. He looks at the map and they skip a whole island. And obviously that's not what would happen, but I was thinking it would be really funny if on the bridge they reference the Norwegian website to figure out where they're going next, because they don't quite have it all the same. So Norwegian, you got some issues on your website to take care of. We really should address who these itineraries are for. I didn't know about this itinerary. It comes up if you're really specific on how you search, but I get newsletters and mailings from Norwegian almost daily, certainly weekly and monthly, and I've never seen this itinerary. So I thought to myself, what's going on? Why haven't I seen it? Well, it departs from La Romana, Dominican Republic. And most of the Dominican Republic stops that I see stop in like Amber Cove, Puerto Plata, the northern part of the island. Okay, so this is an island, a port that I'm not familiar with. I started to look at how do you get there? I want to fly nonstop to La Romana. Is that even possible? It is. But it's difficult from the United States. And I'll throw up a graphic here of incoming trips or flights to La Romana. And I note, wow, most of these are coming from Europe. And so it got me thinking, is this really marketed towards Europeans? It might be. Why would you fly to the United States and deal with huge busy ports there? Perhaps this is a more European-focused cruise. If you are flying in from the United States, you can fly to Punta Cana or Santo Domingo. Both of those cities have regular flights from the mainland US, and they're, going to run you about $500 round trip per person. So not bad, maybe not quite as inexpensive as flying to Fort Lauderdale, and also not as convenient for those of us in the US as flying to Puerto Rico, which is right next door to the Dominican Republic. So there are round trip cruises out of Puerto Rico, but most of them don't quite have the variety score that Norwegian is doing here. But if you are in the United States, you'll most likely need to fly to Punta Cana or Santo Domingo, both of which have a transfer of about an hour, hour and a half respectively. Definitely try to book that through the cruise line. As I mentioned, there are 7 different versions of this itinerary. Typically, if you've never cruised the Caribbean before or really dug into how Caribbean cruise itineraries work, they will often say do an A, B itinerary where we cruise itinerary A, and then we cruise itinerary B, and then we cruise itinerary A, and then we cruise itinerary B, cycle back and forth, which is convenient if you want to do a back-to-back cruise and see maybe 2 different parts of the Caribbean, but you're always going to go back to your origination point. This itinerary, the string of itineraries though, was interesting because it starts with 3 slightly different 14-day itineraries, then does a 9-day, then does a 12-day, then repeats that 9-day, then does a 10-day, then does a different 9-day. They're all 1 or 2, or, as it gets shorter, a few more stops get dropped off. So grouping these stops together, they start in the Greater Antilles, and then you have the Lesser Antilles that you hit, as well as the Netherland Antilles, or the ABC Islands, are kind of all part of the groupings here. And depending on which date you're cruising, will have some combination of the same groupings of stops. And then when it's done, after these itineraries, it does a repositioning cruise for 3 days to Miami, where it then cruises out of Miami for the rest of the summer. That's fine, but every single one of those itineraries starts and ends with multiple sea days. These itineraries don't have any sea days because you're already starting in the Caribbean. All right, so where does this ship go? Since each itinerary is similar, it's a bit difficult to compare them, but I took care of that for you. I actually put everything into a chart. I scored every itinerary. I have all of the islands mapped out. So in the chart, so you can see and quickly compare where these go. Hopefully that will make it easier for you to make your choice. Let's quickly step through and run through, just so we can orient where we are in the world, what the potential stops could be. So as I mentioned, we start in La Romana, the Dominican Republic. Then some of the itineraries go to Cabo Rojo, which is a new cruise port that's just opening up. They're in the middle of and finishing its initial construction phase. I believe it should have been done already for this season. And Norwegian Cruise Line is the first, to my understanding, the first cruise line to stop there. The DR is putting a lot of emphasis and a lot of money into building this brand new cruise port. They're hoping to eventually be able to support 1 million cruise passengers a year while keeping it more in a natural environment. The Dominican Republic is a beautiful island and has a ton of nature to explore. Just keep in mind that this is basically the first set of itineraries to visit a brand new place. So it might be a little rough around the edges with construction wrapping up. Then we visit the ABC Islands with Aruba, a great island, Curacao, which is an amazing place to visit, a beautiful city, great walking, and Bonaire is another island here. That comprises the ABC Islands, and some configuration of these 3 islands are on all of these itineraries. Bonaire being one of my personal favorite, in the top 3 at least of this series. Then we head over to Grenada, which has a lot of meaning to me personally, as I have a family member who's from Grenada, who's born there, and it's just a special place for us. Next, we may head to Trinidad and Tobago, again, another very interesting place to visit, and a special place to me, as I have a very dear friend who's Trinidadian. Then we go to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I've actually not been to this port, but it looks really, really nice. We'll head on to Barbados. Barbados was one of the first cruise ports I've ever been to. St. Lucia, which would also be in my top 3. My wife and I had a very romantic horseback ride, just the 2 of us and our guide. We were not with other people. It was like we had the beach to ourselves. St. Lucia is beautiful. Martinique, another one that means a lot to me and my family. My grandmother was a missionary in Martinique years and years ago when she was young, and she spoke French there, and she would speak French to me and my brother as we were growing up. So Martinique has a special place in our hearts. Then Dominica, which is different than the Dominican Republic. Dominica is a Lesser Antilles island. Then we go to Guadalupe, Antigua, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Martin, which is an interesting place. My brother was actually on a TV show that took place in St. Martin. My family's got some fun connections to the Caribbean. And then finally, we head to Tortola, which is in the British Virgin Islands, before coming back. Now, not all of these itineraries go to all of these places, but all of these itineraries hit some combination of these places. And the shortest of them is 9 days. The longest is 14 days. So I'm going to throw up a chart here that shows you which itineraries go to which islands. And I think this is helpful because maybe, like I mentioned, some of these islands mean something to me and my family personally. So if we really wanted to go to Grenada, well, we need to make sure that we don't pick that last 9-day cruise that leaves on April 20th. It doesn't go to Grenada, but all the other ones do. If we really wanted to go to Martinique and that was top of the list for us, then we really have two choices, right? The first 14-day that leaves on January 19th or the third 14-day that leaves on February 26th. Both of those go to Martinique. None of the others go to Martinique. So we just have to decide. That could be the biggest factor for helping you decide which one of these itineraries you want to go to or go on. For us, we start looking at, okay, which islands do we want to visit again? We've been to the majority of these. Or we start looking at which islands have we not been to and we want to make sure we get to. And, I've not been to Tortola, for example. Oh, but look at that. These itineraries, all of them hit Tortola, so we'd be good to go there. But you get my point. If Guadalupe was on your list, you have one option. The next thing that we want to look at really is Clint's cruisability score for all of these. And I went through and scored essentially 8 cruises, but there's 7 itineraries. Of note, the second 14-day itinerary scores the highest. They're all pretty close together, which is encouraging. That tells me that you can't really go wrong with any of these. Well, there's one that you could maybe go wrong with, and I'm going to point that out in a second. So stick with me here. The reason that second itinerary, weeks 3 and 4 of this ship's Caribbean adventure, score higher is because it has a slightly higher repeatability score, and as well as adventure score and relaxation score. It's just a little bit higher. It's actually a little lower on enrichment score compared to the first and third itineraries, but it is the highest rated of these. The 9 days that are repeated, that's the first 9-day after the string of 14 on March 11th, and then the 9-day that leaves on April 1st. Those are the exact same itineraries, and they're actually the weakest of the bunch. They take a hit in variety. That's because they don't visit as many islands. You can't get a 10 out of 10 if you're not going to 10 different islands, which the 14 days are going not only 10 different islands, they're actually going to more than 10 different islands, but they're going to 10 different countries. The 3 14 days at the beginning, these 3 itineraries, all get a perfect 10 out of 10 on variety, which is pretty amazing. I haven't reviewed an itinerary yet that hits a 10 out of 10. So if we're really just basing this exclusively on score, then the February 12th itinerary wins out. However, if you only have room in your schedule for a 12-day or a 10-day, well, there's only one 12 or 10-day available here. Keeping in mind that the 9 days and 10-day and 12-day all have no sea days. Every single day you're visiting a new port. Here's a chart of the actual score breakdown with all of the numbers, what I use to actually create the scores themselves. So if you are interested, there it is. You can pause the video here and dig in a little further if you want to take a look at that. But we'll just go ahead and move right on. All right, obviously when you're picking out a cruise itinerary, the cost is always a factor, right? And here we have 8 itineraries with 8 different prices. So we have to look at the cost to figure it out even further, right? The scores, there was kind of a clear not as good as the others, and there was kind of a clear slightly better than the others, but if you have 3 or 4 dates that are available, cost could be a factor. So what I did is I actually looked at the cost per day. Because when you're going to the Caribbean, maybe you're comparing this against an all-inclusive, and the cost per day to stay at a resort or at a hotel is going to be a couple $100s to get a hotel room, and then you have your food and all of that. So let's break it down by day, because then it sort of equalizes how all of these play out. So I'm going to throw the chart up on the screen now. So the red line is for balcony rooms and the blue line is for inside rooms. For a 14-day, you may not think you could handle staying in an inside room, and I understand that. I can tell you that my wife and I just did a 14-day Norway trip, and we had an inside room. No windows, but we treated it like our bedroom. The rest of the ship was like our house. We just didn't stay in our room very often. And what that does is that enables us to go on more cruises. However, in fairness, our 25-day Mediterranean cruise had a balcony, and it was nice. So we get it. But looking at these, you basically have to double the price, double the numbers, because these are per person prices. But look at this, by far, the worst value is the March 11th date. It's the lowest score and the highest price. And I was like, why is this? And it dawned on me, it's spring break. March 11th, it's right in the middle of spring break. So of course the prices are higher. Not only are the prices higher, the ship is gonna be full, right? It's gonna be a lot busier. Now it's 9 days, it's not a week-long cruise. It's a little bit longer than that. But that would explain why the prices are so much higher. Just because it scores lower, comparatively speaking, it's still a very nice itinerary because there are no sea days, right? This is pretty great. What's interesting is the best value is the one that leaves on February 26th. It's for an interior room, $55 a day per person, $110 a day. That is crazy for that. So, 14 days there, I just fantastic value for that one, which is really almost shocking. However, the one that gets the highest score on February 12th is only $4 more per person per day. So you're still right there. Notice that the best value for a balcony, though, is April 10th, which is a 10-day cruise. It's a very solid price, reasonable amount of time to spend in the Caribbean, and you're getting off the ship every day if you want. One of the things I did want to point out too when we look at the data this way is that the delta between the balcony rooms and the inside rooms is actually greater the longer the cruise. So I could see, if you're going on a 10-day cruise, springing, particularly on April 10th, springing for that balcony room, it's not that much more compared to the 14 days where it is a bigger jump. Okay, so which one is it? Which one can we say this is the cruise for me? Well, for my viewer who gave me this idea, it makes sense for me to say that the 14-day that leaves on February 12th is the cruise. It scores the highest. It's a really solid value, just a slightly more than the best value. Barely. We're talking single-digit dollars more expensive per day. That's pretty great. So this one gets an initial total for a Clint's Cruisability score of 34.9 out of 50. That's a really solid score. It gets a ship bonus of 3.5. I get the ship score from cruisecritic.com. I just grabbed their score. I have not been on this particular ship, though I have cruised on a sister ship to the Norwegian Sky. And then it gets a novelty bonus of 8.75. This gives a total Clint's Cruisability score of 43.65. I have not seen a Caribbean cruise itinerary this good, really ever. The downside to this itinerary, even this, string of itineraries, is the ship that it's on. The Norwegian Star is fine. It's not great. It's not horrible. It's fine. But you're not spending much time on it. It's basically a room and some good food to get you to the next place, maybe have some drinks at night, some decent shows, and then you get up the next morning and you're doing something fun on the island. So I can kind of excuse it, right? It's okay because I don't have to worry about it. And these are all ports of call that you want to be in. If 14 days is too long, the 10-day on April 10th looks really, really interesting and is a solid value as well. So what are you waiting for, right? Like and subscribe, and let's go get on this ship.